I have a selection of boards here which I use for playing Oware, and these are all handmade boards that I've made myself over a period of time. One in sapele there, a folding board in Iroko, another folding board in teak. This one actually was one of my first boards that I made. That's also in teak. Slightly smaller holes. It was a little different to this when I first made it, and it had square corners, but I rounded those off, and it's got a slightly more appealing feel to it now, and a larger board there in Iroko. We have also here a couple of shop bought boards. I think these have been manufactured over in Africa. You can buy these online. The only problem with them is they do have rather small pits, and they're a little awkward for playing with in order to grab the seeds, and I think you can see the difference in pit size between some of these boards. You know, the larger pits are a lot easier on the fingers. And here, this was another board. This one I didn't make. This came across from Antigua, and I managed to buy this on eBay just recently. So very nice boards, all for playing the game of Warri, Mancala, Io, Warri, whatever you like to call it. There's such a variation of these different African games, and I'm just going to try and explain a few of them now in this short video, and hopefully clear up one or two little bits of confusion as well. I'm going to go through the rules of Oware here, and Oware is just one variant of a group of games known as Mancala games. They're so wide and varied, it's almost impossible to categorise them all. There are 4-row versions, 3-row versions, but in this particular case we're dealing with a 2-row version which has 12 holes, 6 holes obviously on each side, as you can see. It would be fair to say that Oware itself is a generic term, because your idea of Oware might be different to my idea of the game, because you've been shown a different variant depending on who you've met and where they've come from. So what we're going to do today is follow the rules, and I've got this little rule book here, and this is for the Abapa version, and it's by a guy called Kofi Tool, and this is the rule set that's generally used by the Oware Society, and I've also ploughed through the rules that are laid down by the Warri Society International, which is based over in Antigua, I believe, or certainly in that part of the world, and they use the same set of rules. There is also another book called Io by Chief Odelay, if I've pronounced that right. This is actually quite an old book. This goes back to about 1979, and it describes also 2 or 3 variants of the Io game, one of which is almost identical to Oware. Again, it's very difficult, because if you actually speak to someone and mention the name Io, that could mean one of several different games to them. So we're going to go for the one that's closest to Oware in here, with one slight variation in the rules, and it is literally in the end game, but the basic principles of the game are exactly the same. I'm led to believe there are about 200 variations of this game, and it's just, that's mind-boggling really, but they're all, some of them are vastly different, and some of them are just very slight changes to the rule. Some of them are just identical games, but called by different names by different tribes. I mean, this game has spread throughout Africa. It was also spread by the slave trade into the West Indies, which is why it continues now to this day as the game of Warri over there. So I do apologise if this is the version, or a different version to the one that you know, but I'm just purely going in this one by the Abapa version. I'd love to hear any other versions that you know. By all means, let me know about them, but don't chastise me if it's not the version that you know, because there are just so many variations and differences. But this one does seem to be the most popular that I've come across anyway. Okay, let's get into the rules then. Well, the board is fairly simple. 2 rows, 6 holes in each row. This side of the board is mine, and this side of the board is my opponent's. The object of the game is to capture the seeds of my opponent and put them into this pit here. This is actually a store pit. It's not used for any other purpose in the game, and this is my opponent's store pit. You will see boards for sale that are just 12-hole, 2-row boards, and then you've just got to literally, as you capture the seeds, you just need to put them in some receptacle or just in front of you anyway. I've seen players just literally holding them in their hands as they play and capture. So that's the object of the game, to try and capture the seeds, or the majority of the seeds of my opponent. There are, as you can see, 4 seeds in each hole, and this is the actual starting position of the game. Straight away that tells you there are 48 seeds in play in the game, and as you capture them, seeds will be removed and put into your store pit. If you get the majority of the seeds, i.e. 25 seeds or more, clearly you're the winner. All moves in the game of Oware Abapa are carried out in an anti-clockwise or counter-clockwise direction, i.e. this way. And that's true of my opponent as well. We're going in an anti-clockwise direction. I think the simplest way to describe this is to literally pick up some seeds and begin sowing, and hopefully you'll get along and get the idea of the game. I can only pick up seeds from my side of the board. I am not allowed, unless capturing, to collect or pick up seeds from my opponent's side of the board. Same is true again for my opponent. They can pick up from their side of the board, they distribute round the board, but they cannot pick up or begin from my side of the board. So I'll pick up the contents of the pit. Whenever you pick up the contents, you pick up all of the seeds in the pit. In this starting situation, there are 4 seeds. If there were 8 seeds in there, I would pick them all up. No matter how many seeds, if there was 1 seed in there, I would pick that seed up. And I move them anti-clockwise, one at a time, starting from the hole immediately in an anti-clockwise direction. So one's gone in there, 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 and there. And that is the end of my turn. There is no repeat or relay sowing. In certain games, you would pick up the seeds, carry on, pick up the seeds, carry on until you got to a vacant hole. But in this game, you have one move, there is no relay sowing, and you place all the seeds until all of the seeds in your hand are spent. Okay, I'm going to move for my opponent now as I'm here on my own. And again, they can only pick up from their side of the board. So they pick up the contents, let's say, of this pit here, and they move in that same anti-clockwise direction. All 4 seeds, 1, 2, 3, 4. As you'll notice, it's starting to return back round on my side. Last seed landed in there, and that's the end of their turn. Now it is my turn. I could pick that 1 seed up and literally drop that in there. I could pick any of these other seeds up as I desire and distribute them. But just remember, you pick all of the seeds up and you distribute them in an anti-clockwise direction. Right, I'm going to make my move now. Okay, I said earlier on that the object of the game is to capture the seeds of your opponent. Well, it's my opponent's turn, and I'm just going to show you how we actually go about capturing seeds. The way we do this is by landing the last seed of any turn. So when we pick up a group of seeds, if the last seed of that turn lands in your opponent's pit and it makes either 2 or 3 seeds, that enables the person or the player to capture and remove those seeds from the board. But it's only if you can manoeuvre your seeds and make that happen on your opponent's side of the board. Now it's my opponent's move, and they're going to do just this now, because they're going to remove the 5 seeds from this pit, and if we count that round, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that will land in this pit, make 2 seeds, which fulfills the criteria, It's on my side, i.e. I'm their opponent, and they will be able to remove those 2 seeds from the board. So let's just make that move. 1, 2, 3, 4, last seed, 5. That's made 2. They now remove those seeds from the board. And it's now my turn. They have a single seed over there, and it stands to reason that any pit with seeds totaling 1 or 2 are vulnerable pits, because if I can land a seed on top of there and make that become either 2 or 3 seeds with the addition of that seed, then I can capture. But in this particular situation, I cannot, because I have 6 seeds in this pit, and that's going to fly right past that pit there. 6 seeds in this pit, that again is going to go 1 too many. I've got 5 seeds there, and that's actually going to bring me up short. So I can't capture that seed. So although we might think of it as a vulnerable seed, to my opponent it's not, because it's in no danger of capture from me. So I'm going to make my move here now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so it's now my opponent's turn. Again, although I've got single seeds there, which could be deemed to be vulnerable, they can't actually land any seeds on those at present. All of these seeds will go too far. 5 seeds here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they won't make it to these single seeds. So my opponent picks up this pit. Okay, in order to make this video a little shorter and not too boring, I hope, I've just moved the seeds into a slightly different configuration. As you can see, myself and my opponent now are in a situation where we've been winning seeds from each other. It's now my turn, and we've got a slightly different thing that you can do here. You can actually perform what we call multiple captures, and that is to say you can capture more than 1 pit. Now, I mentioned just a minute ago that if you land your last seed into a pit and it makes either 2 or 3 seeds, you capture that pit. Well, the same is true in any of the preceding pits, and I'll show you what I mean here by this. I'm going to pick these 6 seeds up here, and I'm going to move them in the anti-clockwise direction. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now my last seed landed in this pit here. It's 2 seeds, that is definitely a capture to me. But the one preceding it also has now 3 seeds in it. The one preceding that has 2 seeds in it, and they also are captured by myself. So now they become my seeds. Okay, I've set up a similar situation here so that you can see, or it explains this rule a little more clearly. As I said to you, if I can make 2 or 3 seeds with my last seed that I land, I capture those pits, and any of the preceding pits also will be vulnerable to capture if it makes 2 or 3 seeds. And I'm just going to show you a slightly different situation. I pick up the 6 seeds from this pit and I sow them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, last one landed here, it made 2, I capture. The one before it made 2, I capture. But the one before it has now become 4. It's not 2, it's not 3. I do not capture from that pit. And if this were further down the board, that would actually cause a break in the chain, and I would not capture any pits that were 2 or 3 past that. And I'm just going to illustrate that because I'm not sure that I fully explained that too well. Okay, same situation again. I pick up the 6 seeds from this pit and I sow. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My last seed landed in this pit. 2 seeds, I capture. The preceding pit has now become 4 seeds. It's not eligible. I cannot capture it. And although this one became 2, that chain has been broken by this pit. So it's only preceding pits where it continues to either be 2 or 3 seeds. That was the only capture I could make in that move. Right, well I'm not proposing to get too heavily into any tactics here because my only aim really was to just try and explain the rules of the game. But I just want to show you a little situation. It's now my turn and I am in a position where I can capture from my opponent. None of these seeds will reach around the board, but by moving this one seed here, I can capture, that will become 2, and I can capture from my opponent. And that would enable me to capture 2 seeds. But I'm looking back down this end of the board, and it might be more prudent for me, rather than going straight in for the kill and trying to capture there, to look at what my opponent's next move will be. And I'm sure you can see they have 2 seeds here. They would pick those up, move the 2 seeds, go 1, 2. In light of what we've just said, that would become 2 seeds, that would become 2 seeds. They would come off of the board. So my opponent in my next move would actually win 4 seeds, even though I've only just won 2 seeds. So it would rather be a loss for me. So in this particular situation, it might not be the best manoeuvre for me to capture those 2 seeds. I might want to think about moving these out of harm's way. If I move this seed to this pit, that's become 2, but again, my opponent moves 1, 2, this pit becomes 3, they're still eligible to capture those 3 seeds. So what should I do? Quite simple. The last seed is the one which enables you to capture, and I'm just simply going to pick this seed up and now manoeuvre that out of harm's way. So if my opponent moves these 2 seeds, they'll go 1, 2, the last seed drops in that pit, they have nothing to capture because there wasn't already a seed in there. It is possible during the game to accrue a considerable amount of seeds in a pit, and there is actually an advantage to doing this, because if you get more than 12 seeds in a pit, as you can appreciate there are only 12 pits, you can actually come round a second time in your turn. But there is an important rule to notice here. Now this is my turn and I believe there are about 13 seeds in this pit. So I'm going to manoeuvre from this pit, and the rule that goes here is that you cannot sow back into the pit that you've just picked up from, and I'll illustrate what I mean by actually making the move. So I'll pick up those seeds and I begin. This is the starting pit. I skip that pit, I go to that one and then the next one. But you'll see what's happened here in this move. I've gone all the way around the board twice, but I've landed back on my opponent's side. So although I went round, came back on my side, I've now come back to my opponent's side. The last seed made 3. I capture those, so they become my capture. And it is possible, if you have a considerable number of seeds in a pit anywhere along the board, if they can stretch back round, you can actually make a considerable capture from your opponent's side of the board, as long as it makes 2s and 3s again. But the important rule to notice here is if you get more than 12 seeds or more, you do not sow back into the pit that you picked up from. You skip that pit and then just carry on counting again. Right, the game of Oware is all about maintaining the supply of seeds to your opponent. You have to play as a gentleman, as it were. Now it's my opponent's manoeuvre, or turn to move, and let's just see what happens. They have no choice. The only seeds that they have on the board are these 2 here. So my opponent plays those 2 seeds. Makes 4 there, so there's no capture. It is now my turn. And as you can clearly see, my opponent has no seeds whatsoever to play with. I now must make a move which supplies seeds to my opponent, which rather restricts what I can do on the board. But what I'm trying to say is I cannot make a manoeuvre now, or a move at all, which does not give my opponent seeds. So I cannot just do that. I cannot move these 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, because it does not put seeds onto my opponent's side. The only manoeuvre I can make is to manoeuvre this pit here, which will supply my opponent with a seed, and that has to be done at all times. Okay, it's now my manoeuvre, and I'm going to show you now a manoeuvre that you are not allowed to make in the Abapa rules of Oware. Now, in certain games, and I have read on certain sites, you can make what they call a Grand Slam move. I have read that in the instructions for Warri, but according to the Warri Society International, you are not allowed to make what they call a Grand Slam move. And I'll go on to explain exactly what I mean by that. It's my turn to manoeuvre, and as you remember earlier, I'm not allowed to make a manoeuvre which will leave my opponent without any seeds. So I cannot, for instance, do this. I pick these 5 seeds up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In this situation, last seed has landed in that pit, that makes 2, that makes 2, that makes 2. From what I told you earlier on, they would all be eligible for capture, but it would leave my opponent without seeds, and that is not what we do in the game. It is possible to make the manoeuvre, as I just did. It is possible to carry out that move, but I would not capture any of these seeds. I would usually try and make another move, depending on how I felt and how the tactics of the game were going. So you cannot make the Grand Slam move. Now, there are certain games that you will see where they say that you can do that, and in some games it's actually a winning move. If you can do that, if you can leave your opponent without any seeds, that would win the game. But that's not what, certainly not what's laid down in the Abapa rules, and also as I say, the International Warri Society don't allow that manoeuvre either. It is possible in the game to end up winning seeds, capturing seeds from each other's side, and ending up with too few seeds to actually make a meaningful capture. And you could end up literally just chasing each other around the board. And in this situation, all you can do is agree that you're in a stalemate situation. I keep my seed, the opponent keeps their seeds, you have a count up, see who's won the game. And it may be that you've got 24 seeds each, and in which case the game is a draw. Now, the following situation can occur, and it's one of the main reasons that I've made this video, because a number of videos that I've seen out there which explain the game probably far, far better than I've done tend to omit exactly what happens in this situation, and it does vary between one rule book to another. But as I said, I'm going with the Abapa rule set, and I'll show you exactly the situation that we can get into and explain the differences between one game and another. Now, it is my opponent's move. They only have one move that they can do. They have a single seed on this side of the board, so they make their move. As I said earlier, I'm now obliged to make a move where I feed my opponent some seeds, but as you can clearly see in this situation, I cannot do it. 3 seeds from here, 1, 2, 3, 1 seed, 1. These seeds here, 1, 2, 3. So I am now in a situation where, although I would be obliged to feed seeds to my opponent, I cannot do it. In Warri, these seeds would become mine. My opponent is starved. These would become my seeds. Now, in the rule book that I have for IO, and I've certainly seen it in other rules online, if we were in this situation again, and I had insufficient seeds to feed my opponent, it would be me at fault because I couldn't feed my opponent, and they would keep the seeds, so they would become theirs. Okay, but in Oware, that's not the way that it's played. With Oware, if you end up with all of the seeds on your side and your opponent with none, you keep the seeds, they stay on your side of the board. Now, I'll probably be at a little bit of a difference with some people here, because I tend to think that what I think of as the IO rule is somewhat fairer, because you can actually put yourself into a situation where you can almost deliberately starve your opponent. It's not a gentlemanly thing to do, but you can actually manoeuvre in such a way where you could slow and retard the pace of the seeds down through the game and leave your opponent again in that situation. You cannot physically feed them seeds, and I would then get to keep those seeds. It's a minor point, but it's just the way I feel about the game. You can actually deliberately starve your opponent, but it's not to be encouraged by any means. Well, I think that covers all of the rules. You will find as you play it, it is a game of extreme strategy. There are so many different nuances to the game. It's a very exciting game. And it can be quite a tense game as well. And the more that you play, the more you realise these little subtleties to the game. It's not all about attack, it's about defence and a balance of those two qualities. Kofi Tall in his book has written a section of rules in brief. Now I hope I've covered them all, but I'm just going to read through these here, and then hopefully all of these rules will make sense. And it goes on. Number 1, 4 seeds are placed into each of the 12 cups. Each player, this is number 2, in turn empties the seeds from one of his or her cups and sows them into adjacent cups, moving in a counterclockwise direction, leaving the original cup empty, which we've done. Number 3, when the last seed is placed into an opponent's cup containing 1 or 2 seeds, the player captures those seeds as well as any adjacent cups containing 2 or 3 seeds on an opponent's side. So if I was to come this way around the board and they were my last 2, 2 and 3, I would capture those seeds. Number 4, when the opponent's cups are empty, the player must feed the opponent's cups if possible. If he or she cannot do this, then she captures all the remaining seeds on his or her side. And that was the last rule that we came on to, and that was the important bit. That if you cannot feed seeds to your opponent, you would keep the seeds on your side. Number 5, a player must not place any seeds into the original cup from where he or she has removed the seeds. And this is such as a heavily loaded cup that makes more than one revolution of the board. And this goes on to say what I was saying about having 12 seeds in there. You would go all the way around the board, but you would skip the original cup that you picked up from. So if you pick up from a cup, you do not sow back into that cup. Number 6. Each player gains the remaining seeds in his or her territory when they cannot be captured. And this was the point I made, that if you've only got a couple of seeds on each side of the board and you're going round and round chasing each other, and you agree that you cannot get any further, then obviously you would divide those seeds up between you. It just has a little closing thing. It says, except for beginners, all calculations on strategy should be performed mentally. And I think really that's, I think that speaks for itself. You would just sit there, look at the board. It is about counting. You do need to count, and you need to calculate exactly not only what you can do on your side, but what effects it will have on your own side of the board as well. You really can, by at the smallest of mistakes, really change the dynamic of the game. And it also pays not to go and drop the seeds right in the middle of the video as well. Well, I hope you find this video of some use. I just want to reiterate that this is not the version, it is a version. You will find so many different variants of this game, but it's just one of the most popular. And I say it's the Abapa version that I've gone for here. This is played by the Oware Society in Great Britain, which is where I am, and it's the same rules reading through for the Warri Society International. And apart from the little difference at the end of the game regarding who keeps the seeds, if you're unable to supply, it is exactly the same as one of the IO versions shown in this book here. and there are various other names for that same game. Have fun, hope you enjoy the game, and hopefully look forward to meeting some of you at different events, and we can share a game together. Thank you, bye bye.